Hi, Dominic. Thank you for allowing me to interview you.
No problem, Andrea. It's my pleasure.
Today we're going to discuss disability, but more specifically, hiring individuals with disabilities. You are currently an executive board member of CAMP, is that correct?
That is correct.
What does that position entail?
Basically, what I do on the executive board of Camp Super Radio is I am currently in charge of the mobile DJ department, which means that I oversee about 6 or 7 paid DJs that go out and do events for Camp Super Radio. I'm also in charge of all the event planning and coordinating for Camp Super Radio. I do budgeting. I also sit in on Friday and Wednesday meetings with our entire executive board and go over current problems and topics in our radio station and contribute to a lot of the ideas and promotional events that we do. And I also sit on the executive board whenever we do hiring, which is at the end of every year.
Okay, that sounds like a lot. Let me make sure I got everything correctly. So you are the director of the mobile DJs. You also are involved in event planning, budgeting, sitting in on meetings, and hiring?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. What type of person do you guys look for at camp while hiring?
We tend to look for somebody that's energetic, detail-oriented, and passionate, someone that's motivated and wants to do a good job in their position, pretty much.
Okay. So do you guys get a lot of applicants every year?
We tend to get about 4 or 5 applicants for every position. We have about 8 positions.
Okay. Do you guys currently have anyone on staff who has a disability?
No, we do not.
No? Okay. Do you know anyone who has a disability?
Currently, right now, no. I have known people in the past that have had disabilities.
Okay. So, you just said that you've known people in the past who have had disabilities. What have your interactions been with them?
With the people that I've known that have had disabilities, I usually tend to treat them as fair individuals. There was one kid in my architecture studio 101 class that was in a wheelchair from a cliff diving accident, and he was just as motivated as everyone else in the class, and came up with really awesome projects. And sometimes we both worked together on studio projects and fed ideas off of each other. So I didn't really look at the person as a disabled person. I just kind of looked at them as a fellow peer.
Okay, and I noticed that you said that you treat them as fair individuals. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that means?
Fair individuals, in my mind, pretty much just means the same as everyone else. I don't tend to look at them very differently.
Okay, so what you're saying is everyone is the same to you. Would you feel that same way if someone was coming into camp and applying for any position?
It depends on what kind of skill sets they bring to the table. Our goal basically is for whenever we have someone come in to apply for a position and we have a handful of applicants to pick from, we tend to evaluate all the people and their skill sets and what they bring to the table, and we pick the best person for the job. And for instance, if we have someone that applies for a job that requires physical labor and they're in a wheelchair and we know that they might not be able to do some of the work, they might get passed over for the position. But if that person has a disability and the skill set required for the job isn't affected by that disability, they are as equal as all the other applicants. And if that person with this disability is the best applicant out of that group, then they'll be picked for the position. But if there is another able-bodied applicant that rises above them, then they will be picked.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you guys basically treat everyone the same. when it comes to applying for the positions at camp?
Yeah, we try to.
Okay. And you mentioned, I kind of missed it, but you mentioned something about, did you say something about lifting equipment?
Yeah. For some of the mobile DJ gigs, we have to have people come in and lift equipment and all that kind of stuff. They have to move in and out of vans. Some of the stages that we have are wheelchair accessible. So it really depends on what kind of gig and where we're doing it. But for some of the events that we need people to do, someone in a wheelchair probably would be able to overcome all the obstacles very easily.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that there's actually a few barriers that would be troublesome for individuals in wheelchairs. What about individuals with other disabilities? Do you see any barriers there?
With any other disabilities, as far as mental capacities, depending on the severity of their condition, they will be able to do it. But from a management standpoint comes, there's efficiency and effectiveness, and typically when you hire somebody, you want them to be the most efficient at their job, and you want them to be as effective at what they're doing. So if you have a handful of applicants, you're going to try and pick the one that gives you the most output in that position. And if someone with a disability isn't able to give you the output that an able-bodied person would, then they shouldn't be picked for the job.
Okay, so what I'm gathering is that it's pretty fair you judge on the person's capability, but how would you determine whether or not someone is capable of one of the positions? Is it just by looking at them, reading their application, or do you actually allow people to show you kind of what they have?
I think it's fair to ask that if you're asking someone for talking to someone in an interview and they disclose the information that they have a disability, then I feel that it's fair to ask what kind of limitations the disability gives them, because essentially what you're trying to do in an interview is assess that person's strengths and weaknesses, and that person's going to come into the interview and they're going to show you their strengths. But if they do disclose the fact that they have a disability, or it's apparent that they're in a wheelchair or something like that, then that is an apparent weakness in some cases.
Okay, so what I heard is that if someone discloses that they have a disability, that gives kind of a different view for while hiring. But what if someone does not disclose that they have a disability?
As long as it doesn't affect job performance, then it shouldn't be an issue. As long as that person is coming week in, week out, fulfilling the basic job requirements of doing what they need to do, it doesn't matter whether or not they have a disability. And my perception of that person probably will not change, or my perception of their work performance will not change if they do later disclose the fact that they have a disability of some sort.
Okay, so from what I gathered from everything, camp is pretty fair. You guys have a pretty fair system of hiring. You judge based on abilities versus disabled or abled. And I'd like to thank you for having this interview with me.
No problem. It was my pleasure.